we call them killers. They're out there on the field and they have that assassin's mentality to dominate on the field, not just to be a positive thinker, not just to get their thoughts to not be in their way, to use their mind as a weapon to leverage themselves to be one of the best they can be. Talk about that. All right, so we got to give them something. The 98-2 rule. What is that?
Yeah, so the 98-2 rule is.
All right, so I'm here with Ananth Iyer. Just got back from training, and so we're gonna take the audience through point A to point B of our journey together. And just quick backstory, like for me and even Ananth, I usually work with baseball players. I do speak to college athletes pretty regularly in my local area of players of all sports. But Ananth was my first soccer player that I worked with. And it just goes to show the mental game is one of the most important things, if not the most important in every single sport. So Ananth, I'll pass it over to you for a second if you want to just briefly introduce yourself and even just tell like point A where you were at before you and I met.
Yeah, my name is Ananth Iyer. I'm 17 years old. In my senior year of high school, and I play soccer, football, but for American soccer. When I first started working with Justin, I reached out because I felt like I was missing a piece in my training when it came to my mental game and mental preparation. Physically, I was on top of everything like many athletes are. Maximizing their physical routines. But I felt there was just something missing. So that's when I decided to reach out to him after, I had been following Justin for a while through his content, and he was posting some really helpful, really good things that I had started to use. So I thought, let me reach out to him and see how he can help me tackle some of the problems I've been having when it came to inconsistency and just knowing how to handle adversity and how to leverage the mental game. So yeah, that's when I started working with him. And during that time as well is when my recruitment process was starting to pick up. I had just, I was playing with the semi-professional team locally, with the men's team. And I was, figuring out how to get recruited and making my transition to play with the new team. So yeah, it was a pivotal time when I started working with him.
Yeah, and from what I remember too, earlier on, we talked about you mentioned to me, you knew you were a good player, but you had some crucial months coming up, and you wanted to make sure that your mind was ready, your body was ready, you were the most complete player that you could be, so that when you got into those bigger situations, playing in front of college scouts, guys that were maybe gonna have a chance to make an offer to a guy, you played your best in those moments. And as for me, as for everybody, it's like there's a lot of pressure building up into that, because that it's like, man, I might only have a few real opportunities for the time when the time is, to have your time to shine, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so tell the audience or anyone watching, like the first couple months, tell them about like what it was like for you when we started getting into some of these new routines that we implemented.
Yeah, so I mean, the first couple of months, I think things were a little bit new to me, which was natural. But I thought Justin, he did a great job of helping me ease into things, and he set very specific goals, specific guidelines, even things to do on my own, like homework, in that sense. So it was easy to follow along. We'd started out with me writing a lot of things down, which I still do. And it's a habit that's actually really changed my game. But we wrote a lot of things down, and he was telling me a lot of new information. So I was making notes of that and then practicing it throughout the week. So a lot of it was, the first couple months was a lot of information, a lot of new information that was very helpful, and then how to apply that. And then as it went on, it became more tailoring to what was specifically going on a week-to-week basis, with strength injuries and injuries, lack of playing time, breaking back in, events, showcases. So the first, when I started out, it was me strictly listening and taking in information, which I thought was really helpful. And he made sure to articulate the most important points, um, and really get right to the chase with specific things I could implement. So
I saw with you there was different things you improved on throughout different times, and I think the way it worked out for you too is that those things that you improved on, you did them in the proper order. What do you think from your perspective were things you improved on early on when we worked together, and then what are things that you think you know finished with a strong you finished the race off, right? It was a strong finish. You had some other finishing pieces that kind of was the icing on the cake, I think, for you.
yeah, I think some of the main things um, that I started to do at first. Definitely the first thing, writing things down. I'd never, up until that point, I never cared to write things down when it came to my mental game. Writing to myself, a lot of it was with the notebook. And I think that habit, that in itself is huge. So that was the first thing combined with the other things. Secondly, uh, you know, he gave me a lot of real examples and a lot of different phrases. For example, I don't want to give away all his great uh, methods, but some really, really good methods that, you know, I was writing down and remembering and really putting those into practice. And a lot of those methods were just small phrases, different cues to look for, and all those were drawn from specific stories and situations that other athletes are. He's been doing this a long time, so um, different experiences that he would tell me, and then there's always a way that you can implement those. And a lot of that was through phrases that you can easily remember. Um, and really, really, the main part was learning how to play loose. Loose, free, and aggressive was one of the mottos. And everything stems from that. Playing in that zone, finding that place where you're you're playing loose, free, and aggressive. And I think that applies to all sports. So everything that he said that could apply to any sport, in my opinion. It's not exclusive to one, um, because in all sports you have to come play from a place of wanting to make things happen, wanting to create. Um, so those were all huge points for me early on. And then as it went on, it went on to a lot of things happened in my kind of career. Things got messy, things got chaotic, which he helped me through those times. So
A lot of these mental cues that we're talking about, it's about using the tools to tap into a different mental space. One of the big things that is huge for all athletes, something we worked on a lot, is being in the present moment and kind of detaching what you can control versus the result. Detaching off the result. We talked a lot about that. Spent time on trying to be in the present moment as well. Um, Talk a little bit about that, how it's affected you, maybe even how some of the cues, like you said, or routines are used as tools to help you out with that, and really just anything at all within that area.
for me, like you said, being present was my thing, the thing that I needed to focus on the most, because what was happening in the past was there was times in the game where I wouldn't be present, and I had to get to the root of those issues. So why was this happening, and then what can I do to fix it? So for me, I think in terms of being present, which as an athlete, you know that when you're the most present is when you play the best. Um, and I think as I am now, I play a lot more present than when I started, and that was huge. Um, a lot of that was because of the journaling and the constant 90-82 rules, um, things that I was writing down to myself, and um, also having consistent routine. He stresses the importance of having that consistent routine and planning out your day um the day before, having a set routine that you're doing, and it's all stuff that he does too, So it's it's coming from an athlete who has gone through it and telling you what practices made him become a pro. So I listened to those things that he told me, um, implemented those, and I think now it's taking me to a place where my performance is a lot more consistent. And specifically in my situation, faced a lot of different changes, setbacks. One of them was me moving to a new team, which isn't easy in a lot of cases. There's a lot of things that you have to adapt to. A new coach. Um, I had college showcases, and there was one case where I had a game in a college showcase, and I told him I played well in the showcase. One of the games I didn't play so well. There was like 10 Division I coaches that happened to be watching that game, and I didn't play so well. But knowing how to bounce back from meeting with him, I bounced back, and the next day I played better, and I got offers. So just having that capacity to bounce back, where I did do well in front of high level Division I coaches, and then the next day I bounced back, and I got college offers from that showcase. So that was a huge moment for me, that showcase game where I got offers, and I think that was a huge reason I was able to commit to a school in the end of it, because I had those offers. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm in a place now where I've gotten much, much better. And yeah, being present for me was a huge thing. So yeah.
All right, so we got to give him something. The 98-2 rule. What is that?
Yeah, so the 98-2 rule is, it has to do with your thoughts. So 90% of your thoughts should be in the present moment, what you're doing currently. So like I was talking to Justin, I'm thinking 90%. Even before that, like this is something that I'm drilling into my head. 90% of your thoughts are what you're doing right now. I'm thinking about this interview. 8% is the future. So what am I doing next? And then 2% is reflection, looking at the past. So a lot of athletes, I feel like, are probably in somewhere like 40, 40, 40, 20, where they're 20% thinking about the past, 40% in the future, and then 40% now. I feel like the vast majority of athletes are somewhere like that, or it could be different, whatever it could be. But I feel like very few athletes are really truly thinking 2% in the past, because there is a time for reflection, and that's the lessons you derive from failure. But I realized that thinking about failure is only going to take you so far. I was reflecting a lot more than I should have been. I was overthinking things, and that doesn't allow you to play in the present. So that's 90-82. For me, that's what 90-82 means.
Said it perfectly. And I think it's important because we hear all the time that you got to be in the present moment. I don't think that's super new news to us, but I think that it's really important to leverage the past and the future to get the full complete package. If you're not learning from the lessons and the mistakes you made in the past and applying that for your next opportunities, you're not getting any better. So you got to at least leverage some of the past. We talk about it being a failure extraction process. We're extracting out the lessons of failure and then throwing out the rest. And that's why we keep it at like a 2% range, where you still got to use that data. And then, you got to have a clear path of where you're headed. And that's why we give that number for 8% of the future. It's like having your eye on the prize still that keeps you moving forward, gives you more of a purpose with everything you're doing. And then once you are clear on that, then you lock back into the present moment. So that's kind of why, for anybody listening, that's kind of why I break it up that way. All right, last question, then I'll let you conclude and kind of tell them about where you're headed. Listening to like you talk now, and even just reflecting on our last 6-7 months together, when you came in and we started, you had like a small funk roadblock, but I think we both knew you were going to overcome it at some point. But then I was like, okay, once you got over that hump, where were you headed now? And I think deep down inside there, from just hearing you talk session after session, when we would dive into it, there was a there was a killer inside you. There was an assassin's mentality inside of you that just needed to come out. He was banging inside you, wanting to come out. He just wasn't ready yet at that time, but he was always in there. We talk about guys like Kobe Bryant. We talk about other athletes that are just, we call them killers. They're out there on the field and they have that assassin's mentality to dominate on the field, not just to be a positive thinker, not just to get their thoughts to not be in their way, to use their mind as a weapon to leverage themselves to be one of the best they can be. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think at first, like you said, I was on the edge when it came to harnessing that mentality of looking to make, like I said, looking to make things happen. And that part of that is having the Mamba mentality, the assassin mentality. So working, over the course of working with him, and I learned um, how to turn that on, and I got to a point mentally where, I think there was one time, as if I recall, that I there was just one session where I was so fired up. What had happened was I had hit adversity. I was on a new team, and I didn't get the playing time I wanted, or I wasn't taken the way I was wanted to by my teammates. I wasn't receptive the way I had thought I would be. Part of that was the environment, but I was so fired up. I told them, "Hey, I'm going to show these guys." I still remember that because, I still get worked up about when I talk about it. Um, but I went from, okay, maybe I do this, and always I'm thinking in the past and thinking about what happened before. So like I'm gonna win this rep. I'm gonna win every single rep for the entire practice and the entire week, and then on the game day, I'm gonna show it to them, and then I'm gonna take it to them the next week, and constantly hammer it in. And I think that's the mentality you have to have as an athlete, especially as you reach the next level, and as the skills close, as the skill gap closes between players. And he knows this more than anything in baseball. I started watching baseball because of him, but I can see that the skill gap is very, it gets very close. And that same thing in soccer. In soccer, as you go higher in levels, there's very small differences between pros. The mentality of the professional is really what separates top soccer players from maybe low to mid soccer players in the professional game. So like the top professionals between the mid tier kind of professionals, it's all mentality, in my opinion. Um, so I went from kind of being hesitant to enter that mode to really entering that mode on a consistent basis, and just and you could see it in my demeanor and how I spoke and how I speak now. And I think I've always had that through my work ethic. But mentally, there was something holding me back from really showing it.
All right, we'll wrap it up with this. Tell them where you're headed now. Tell them what you're going to be doing this spring and then going into next fall.
Yeah, so this spring, I'm going to be finishing up my senior year with the. I really found my footing I've been on a new team, new club team, a really good quality club team, and it's one of the top ones and probably the top one in the state. Um, and yeah, so last game I started play, part of the growth that I saw, it really tied full circle when I actually had an injury, and I came back after not training for a week and a half, and I started the full game and played super well in an extremely good game, and I used almost every single mental practice that I had learned into that game, and it was just a culmination of everything we did. Um, so I'm taking that momentum forward into the spring. This summer, I found a summer opportunity to keep playing semi-professionally in the summer with a really good organization. In the fall, I'm committed now to Auburn University Montgomery. It's one of the top Division II schools in the nation, and happy to say I have a good scholarship to that school. Um, last year they came close to winning the national championship, and they're a consistent powerhouse. And then throughout the great thing about it was I had options to choose from. So I had offers from a lot of even Division One schools. I had offers from multiple Division One schools, multiple high level Division Two schools. So it was a really good thing that I had options to choose from. I ended up choosing the school. You know, it's going to be the best chance to grow and compete in a really, really tough conference. Going to be a room full of extremely good incoming JUCO transfers and you know, a really good competition. So that's where I'm headed to. And you know, I couldn't have done it honestly. When I say I couldn't have done it without them, I think me getting to where I am had a huge was a huge kind of summary of you know what we did mentally because you know the coach offered me and a lot of that you know he told me that he liked me because of the mentality I brought. I wasn't actually training with the team, and so you know a lot of the work we did mentally it showed, and it's one of the reasons I got the offer that I did. So I'm super happy, and I'm excited to go forward and pursue my goal of playing professionally. So that's what my next goal is.
That's awesome. And it was all, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. It was a pleasure working with you. And, you know, you got some things ahead of you, I think, where you're on a really good path to get to. And, you know, hopefully, which I know you will, just continue that momentum of what we started and to keep building. You know, this is kind of just the beginning. The journey, as you know, and as we've talked, is still like ahead of you. You know, the real fun, I think, is still yet to come.
Yeah, for sure. And then definitely, you know, one thing I'll say is to anyone watching this or kind of you know debating on if they need to work on their mental game, if they want to work with Justin or you know one thing I will say is that you know there's a lot of work you can do physically. And you can take this from me, someone who I had to grind every single inch I had to crawl to get to where I am now. I started as not playing on my high school team, which is for soccer, it's a really low level, you know, compared to other sports. High school soccer is not a high level. I wasn't even playing. So from where I started, you know, physically, I've grinded to where I am now. And if you think that the mental game will help you, you can see what it did for me. You know, it really turned my physical work ethic. It really turned that into something where I could get results and I could see the growth from it. So, you know, I highly recommend you work with Justin and work on your mental game. Because, you know, things only get harder once you reach the college level. And if you have goals, if you're a baseball player, I watch baseball now, so I can see, you know, it's all mental. You know, a lot of it is mental. Like, if you want to reach a high level, like some of the top pros I see, you have to work on your mental game consistently and do what other people aren't. You know, a huge piece of succeeding in sport and in life is doing what others aren't. So one of the ways you can do that is working on your mental game.